Thank you very much, Acting Speaker, and I rise to make a contribution to the Advancing the Treaty Process with Aboriginal Victorians Bill 2018, and I'm delighted to have this opportunity. And I come to this debate firstly by acknowledging, of course, that we acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we're meeting, and we pay our respects to elders past and present. And in standing here today, I just wanted to reflect on what an extraordinary, moving introduction of this bill we had when Aboriginal elders came into this chamber and spoke to the chamber about the importance of this bill and indeed a pathway towards treaty. This was I think a very moving moment for the Parliament, and I know a moving moment for the Aboriginal community as well. And I just also wanted to reflect on the fact that, of course, previous to that, the very first time that Aboriginal people had come to stand on the floor of this chamber and to speak in their language was, of course, the Yarra Protection Bill, which I had the honour of putting together along with other colleagues, and only last week we had a meeting with and a launch of a 50-year vision for the Yarra River, with, of course, the Wurundjeri people who are at the centre and at the heart of that great bill, the Yarra Protection Bill. And it was a wonderful morning to again, through the smoking ceremony and the conversations that occurred there, just how important this bill was and continues to be in the life of the Wurundjeri people who so respect the importance of the Yarra River to their cultural and spiritual life. I also wanted to, of course, as a former Minister for Aboriginal Affairs, absolutely pay my respects to the current Minister for Aboriginal Affairs, the Honourable Natalie Hutchins, who by any measure has pushed the cause of reconciliation for our Aboriginal community here in Victoria further than anybody has. And her work here with this treaty, with this groundbreaking treaty legislation, is an enormous credit to her, And I frankly stand in awe at the work that she has done in this space, and I know she has put an enormous effort into this personally. And I just want to publicly again today acknowledge that work on behalf of the Andrews government. Can I say just briefly some of the key aspects of this bill? Obviously, firstly, it is to advance a treaty process with Aboriginal Victorians in a manner that embeds self-determination. And if I learnt anything at all as the Minister for Aboriginal Affairs, I understood that there were two key elements to any association that you have with Aboriginal people. The first is the critical association of Aboriginal people to their land. I mean, that is absolutely fundamental, and it is the bedrock on which this treaty negotiation will in fact absolutely stand. And the second is the respect and the centrality of self-determination. I mean, these are the two key principles that actually must guide a respectful relationship between this Parliament, this government and the Aboriginal community more generally. And I understand that, and this is absolutely embedded within the bill itself. Self-determination. Obviously, the second element is to enshrine the relationship between the Aboriginal representative body and the state as equal partners by requiring them to work together to establish elements necessary to support future treaty negotiations. Thirdly, to enshrine guiding principles for the treaty process that the Aboriginal representative body The state and participants in future negotiations must act in accord with. And finally, to meet public commitments, legislate the Victorian Government's commitment to a treaty process. The bill enshrines the following principles for the treaty process, and these are, Acting Speaker, very important, which obviously will govern the relationship between the Aboriginal representative body and the state and apply to future participants in a treaty process. And they include self-determination and empowerment, fairness and equity, partnership and good faith, mutual benefit and sustainability, and transparency and accountability. And I can't think of a better person to, apart from obviously the Minister herself, but that great Victorian, Jill Gallagher, who of course is the Treaty Commissioner, a person of eminence, a person of huge respect within the Aboriginal community, and I absolutely acknowledge the great work that she has done. Now, we know that leading up to this, the treaty process to date has been, I would absolutely agree with the Minister in her conviction that this has been the most extensive and inclusive process of its kind to harness the voices of Aboriginal Victorians. Consultation has been undertaken in the Victorian Aboriginal community for more than 2 years. Process has engaged over 7,000 Aboriginal Victorians who have strongly supported the push for treaty in this state. And indeed, Aboriginal Victorians rejected constitutional recognition and instead called for a treaty at a statewide forum, I believe, in 2016, in I think February 2016. And indeed, that statewide forum, Acting Speaker, was the first of its kind in more than 20 years. So it's a very symbolic and important conversation. And obviously, in an historic move for this country, our government submitted the first piece of treaty legislation, as I indicated, with that very moving ceremony in March. It is to the great deficit of our state and indeed our country that Australia is the only Commonwealth country not to have a treaty with the First Nations people. This bill commits the government to negotiate a treaty with its Aboriginal people. And obviously, if the bill is passed, and we sincerely hope the bill will be passed, the government will progress treaty with Aboriginal Victorians. I just wanted to use, in a brief couple of minutes I've got left, I've listened very carefully to the contribution by the member for Northcote and the number of issues that she has raised, particularly in relation to the representative structure and the important role of clans and so forth. We will be taking this into a committee process tomorrow afternoon, where there'll be an extensive opportunity to examine the bill in far more detail at the committee stage, which I think speaks to the commitment that the Minister for Aboriginal Affairs has got to seek to enter into a meaningful negotiation and to listen carefully to what the views of the member for Northcote are, and to see if there is a capacity to reach an accommodation around some of the fundamental concerns that the member for Northcote and indeed, as I understand it, the Greens more collectively have got. So we will enter that conversation tomorrow through the committee process, and I'll be very pleased to sit with the Minister to provide her with any support that she needs to see if we can reach across and try to reach at least some level of accommodation with the Greens political party, because we believe that this bill is so fundamental, so fundamental. We don't want to be in a position where we're in a severe conflict around this. There was clearly an opportunity through the Uluru Statement from the Heart for the Commonwealth Government to show leadership in this space. This was an extraordinary opportunity only a year ago where Aboriginal people from across the country came together really seeking leadership from the federal government to say, we hear your voice, we hear what you need in terms of having your voice articulated at a federal level. Sadly, the Commonwealth actually stepped away from that. The Andrews government will not step away from this. We will negotiate in good faith with the Greens political party. We will negotiate with the opposition. This is too important an initiative to let go. I commend the bill to the House.